This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We have kind of a light week because a lot of the chaos was last week. And thankfully, we were together if you were at the housing conference last week. So there's a lot happening last week, but we're going to go ahead and move on. Not last week, sorry, the week before. Our top two things this week, we want to remind folks that if you or your organization are open to signing on to our Restore the Workforce Housing Loan Program sign-on letter, the deadline to do so is this Friday, October 17th. And then also, we just want to highlight some of the federal shutdown impacts on Helene recovery, which were discussed at yesterday's Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina. So again, we have this action alert. We released it at our conference, which happened at the end of September and beginning of October, September 30th and October 1st. And we just want to remind you all, North Carolina still doesn't have a budget. And as a result of that, there are several things, because they're not recurring allocations, that currently have no funding. And one of those is the Workforce Housing Loan Program, or WELP. And it's also not really included in a significant way in current budget drafts. In the Senate version, it's zeroed out, and in the House version, there's only $5 million for the WELP program in only one of the 2 years of the biennium. And so again, just a reminder that without this resource, without WELP, new developments will likely stall, and this will result in construction delays as well as fewer affordable units across the state. So we're sending a letter to the State House and Senate leadership later this month, next week actually, and we're going to urge them to restore full funding for the Workforce Housing Loan Program at $35 million for each year of the biennium, so that housing for communities across North Carolina can support our workforce, our families, our seniors, and more. So reminder, you have until this Friday to sign on. We have over 25 responses so far. We have a good mix of individuals and organizations, but I know we can do better because I know this is a resource that affects so many of us. So to give you a sense of who is filling this out, we have people representing syndicators, developers, architecture firms, law firms, nonprofit service providers, habitat affiliates, and more. And so if you fit in any of those categories, or are a believer in affordable housing and workforce housing and making sure that these units do come to our communities, then you should sign on. We also ask that you please consider taking the North Carolina Housing Coalition's network survey so we can continue to improve our resources and how we engage with you all. We have some really great responses so far, and so thank you if you've taken the time to fill it out already. We don't take your time for granted, and we appreciate your feedback and make sure that we can continue to be a relevant resource and partner as we engage in this work together. Moving on to federal updates, we are entering week 3 of the federal government shutdown, and the Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina met virtually yesterday and highlighted the impacts and potential impacts of this shutdown on the recovery efforts in Western North Carolina. As was mentioned last week, FEMA's work will continue because it is deemed essential, but the National Flood Insurance Program is unable to renew or enroll any new policies during the shutdown. And housing repair and reconstruction efforts in Western North Carolina should be relatively unaffected for now, because the General Assembly previously committed a small pot of state funds to get the Renew NC program up and running, while the state continues to wait for their Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, or CDBG-DR funds, which are administered by HUD. The shutdown does, however, impact the state's ability to draw down from those CDBG-DR funds, and with more than 70% of the HUD staff furloughed, it is likely that the timeline for the state to actually gain access to those funds will be even further delayed. Moving to state updates, the General Assembly will be back in session next week. When they met last month, legislators made a few small adjustments to their meeting schedule from now through late April, so we'll include that updated schedule for you in the call notes. They've Most of the dates have only shifted by a couple of days, but most of them are within the original weeks that they were scheduled to meet from that original adjournment resolution. It's honestly still unclear what the plan for next week's convening or voting are, what the goals for next week will be. I will be there next week, distributing the letter, engaging with folks, and trying to remind them of the importance of the Workforce Housing Loan Program for housing for communities across North Carolina. Continuing on the state side and highlighting some of the conversation from yesterday's Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina meeting. In addition to federal shutdown impacts that were covered, the state also highlighted that they are asking the federal government to cover 47% of the damages. And this is in line with other major storms because to date, the federal government has actually only covered 9% of the storm's economic damage. Also want to lift up one of our partners, Paul Reeves, the president and CEO of Habitat for Humanity of North Carolina. Along with Paul Langston with Baptists on a Mission, they provided an update on home repair and reconstruction grants that their organizations received through the state and how that work is going. And most of the home repair and reconstruction efforts to date have honestly been through nonprofit organizations because, like I mentioned earlier, the state is still waiting on CDBG DR funds. And as they continue to kind of wind up and get the Renew North Carolina Home Repair and Reconstruction Program going, these organizations and community-based organizations have been doing the work. The next Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina will be on Friday, November 14th at 10 a.m. at the Malin Community College in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. But as always, the meeting will also be available for public streaming online. We have a lot of great local headlines for you. One, want to lift up our colleague Hudson Vaughn and the Community Justice Collaborative are featured in a piece by the NC Newsline. And this piece highlights the recent Orange County residents meeting that happened last week about property tax disparities. And how this is a trend not only in the country but across our state. And so I really highly recommend reading this piece and checking out more information about the collective. The Orange County Property Tax Justice Coalition, which is a part of this meeting as well, is working in conjunction to bring tax fairness to about a dozen historically Black communities across Orange County. And at the meeting, more than 160 residents and supporters were in attendance. And so if anybody has ever worked doing community work or local government work, you know that is an enormous meeting. We also want to lift up a few reports, events, and resources for you. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., the National Housing Preservation Database, as well as the National Low-Income Housing Coalition and Public and Affordable Housing Research Corporation are having a webinar looking at different tips and tricks for making the most of the National Housing Preservation Database data and information. And so preservation, along with development of new supply, has to continue to be, prioritized. And so this data set is one that I know that we use consistently, and it's going to be, I'm sure, a really informative session. So if you are able to check it out, we have the link to register in the call notes. Also want to lift up that on Monday, the North Carolina Women's Affordable Housing Network is hosting a virtual introductory training to the 4% low-income housing tax credit in North Carolina. And it's going to be led by various women driving change in affordable housing. So this is next Monday, October 20th from 12 to 1:30. It is free and registration is through Eventbrite, but space is limited. So if you have questions about the event, we'll include an email that you can reach out to in the call notes as well. Additional events that we want to lift up. I know that there will be folks attending this week's American Planning Association North Carolina chapter fall conference this week. So safe travels there. Our senior policy analyst, Anna, will be there, and I know of several others. So safe travels, and I know that there'll be a lot of great information at that event. Also want to lift up that Hope NC's annual Inclusive Housing Summit is happening on November 17th at the Friday Center in Chapel Hill. It's $50 for individuals, $100 for professional organizations. And so you can click on the link that we'll include in the call notes if you want to learn more. I'll be there, so I hope that you all can join us. Last but not least, in additional reports and resources, yesterday, Novogradac released their QCT and difficult development area mapping tool. So Qualified Census Tract is QCT and DDA difficult development area. So this tool is really helpful. It's a bit more user-friendly than the HUD mapping tool if you're trying to see what has changed between this year and last year's designation. So we'll include the links to that tool and the HUD data in the call notes for you as well. That's all we have for you this week. As always, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. One of the best ways that you can reach out and engage with us right now and our two different ways. Sign on to this Workforce Housing Loan Program restoration letter, and also take just a few moments. I promise it's not one of those long drawn out surveys. Take just a few minutes to fill out our network engagement survey so that we can continue to show up and be good partners and a relevant resource for you all as we do this work. Thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time.